In episode 38, Treat Identified Risks and Track Remediation Through Closure, we focus on the part of risk management that is often the least glamorous but the most decisive, turning findings into finished outcomes. Many organizations are good at generating lists of issues, running scans, and holding workshops, yet much weaker at doing the steady work required to close the loop. Without disciplined remediation management, risk registers grow stale, exceptions multiply, and confidence in the process erodes. By contrast, when you treat remediation as a structured pipeline with clear states, owners, and evidence, risk treatment becomes predictable. The goal here is to move from "we found a problem" to "we can prove how it was handled" in a way that stands up to scrutiny. The first stage in that pipeline is triage, and doing it objectively is harder than it looks. Triage means you sort identified risks based on impact, exploitability, exposure time, and business criticality instead of gut feel or personal priorities. Impact captures the potential harm to confidentiality, integrity, availability, safety, or compliance if the risk were realized. Exploitability asks how easy the issue is to abuse in practice, taking into account attacker capability, preconditions, and available tooling. Exposure time reflects how long the vulnerable state has existed and how long it is likely to persist if untouched, which shapes urgency. Business criticality anchors everything in real processes and assets so that high-value services receive appropriate attention. Once triage is complete, you need to make ownership and constraints explicit instead of assuming they are understood. For each significant risk, assign a named owner who is accountable for seeing the issue through from current state to closure, not just for looking into it. Budgets must be recognized early because some treatments require tools, refactoring time, or external services that will not appear magically later. Dates for analysis, design, implementation, and validation give structure to the work and expose conflicts with other commitments. Dependencies, such as other projects, platform changes, or supplier actions, should be written down alongside decision constraints like regulatory deadlines or business blackout periods. This clarity helps prevent risks from drifting as background noise. With the logistics in place, you can choose treatments using the classic options: avoid, reduce, transfer, or accept. Avoidance might mean deciding not to launch a feature, not to use a given technology, or to retire a risky integration entirely. Reduction covers technical and procedural mitigations that lower likelihood or impact, such as hardening controls, improving monitoring, or redesigning access patterns. Transfer includes mechanisms like insurance, contractual shifts of responsibility to suppliers, or managed services that take on part of the operational risk. Acceptance, when justified, must be explicit and documented, stating why the organization is willing to carry the residual exposure and under what conditions that decision should be revisited. The key is that each risk should be associated with a conscious choice, not passive neglect. For risks treated by reduction or avoidance, remediation tasks should be defined with enough precision that success can be tested. Each task needs a clear description, the components it affects, and the specific change to be made, whether that is a configuration adjustment, code modification, or process update. Alongside these details, write acceptance tests that describe how you will prove that the risk has been reduced, not just that work was completed. Acceptance tests might involve security test cases, configuration snapshots, log queries, or demonstrations in a staging environment. When remediation tasks and acceptance criteria are tied together, the conversation shifts from "we did something" to "we can show that the risk profile has changed." Scheduling changes through governance processes ensures that remediation does not collide with other critical activities or introduce new instability. Change advisory boards, release trains, or deployment windows provide the structure where you can place mitigation work alongside features and maintenance tasks. Rollback plans must be created and documented so that if a change causes unexpected behavior, you can restore service without reverting to the original risky state for longer than necessary. Communication plans should consider who needs to know about the change, including operations, support teams, and sometimes customers or partners depending on impact. By threading remediation through governance, you avoid treating it as a side-channel activity that bypasses normal discipline. Many meaningful treatments require coordinated effort across teams, which is where sequencing and unblocking become critical. Some mitigations cannot start until platform teams expose new capabilities or until network changes have been made, while others depend on supplier updates or contract amendments. Mapping these relationships allows you to order tasks so that earlier work enables later risk reductions rather than leaving teams waiting on each other in silence. Coordination also includes resolving prioritization conflicts when different groups share finite capacity. When cross-team dependencies are visible and managed, complex mitigations move steadily instead of stalling in hidden queues. Meanwhile, the risk register must reflect reality, not aspirations, which means continuous updates to status, residual exposure, and evidence links. Status should move through meaningful states such as identified, analyzed, in treatment, awaiting validation, and closed, with brief notes capturing what changed and when. Residual exposure descriptions should be refreshed as mitigations land, indicating what risks remain and how they compare to original levels. Evidence links pointing to test results, reports, configurations, or sign-offs belong directly in the register so that any reviewer can trace findings to proofs without hunting through separate systems. A living risk register becomes both a planning tool and an audit trail. Validation is not a single event, but a practice that must cover both staging and production, with a watchful eye for recurrences. In staging, you confirm that the remediation behaves as expected under controlled conditions, including negative tests and misuse scenarios relevant to the original risk. In production, you monitor logs, metrics, and user feedback for signs that the issue persists, shifted forms, or created new side effects. Some problems may resurface when usage patterns change or when attackers adjust their tactics, so recurring checks are prudent for high-impact items. Validation keeps you from declaring premature victory based on a single successful test. Not every risk can be fully mitigated immediately, which is where exceptions and compensating controls come into play. An exception documents that a particular control or treatment cannot be implemented yet, often due to technical, contractual, or operational constraints. Compensating controls then describe what alternative measures you will use to manage the risk in the interim, such as tighter monitoring, restricted access, or manual checks. Critically, these exceptions must have expiry dates and review triggers so they do not become permanent by neglect. Regularly revisiting exceptions ensures that temporary workarounds do not quietly harden into the new normal. Reporting progress is how you keep stakeholders engaged and demonstrate that remediation is more than a static plan. Trends such as the number of open high-risk items over time or the average age of unresolved findings help illustrate whether the risk backlog is growing or shrinking. Burn-down charts can show the trajectory of remediation work towards specific milestones, such as closing the most severe issues before a major release or audit. Narrative explanations, kept succinct, add context by highlighting key decisions, notable improvements, and areas where constraints still block progress. Good reporting builds trust and supports informed decisions about where to allocate further effort. True closure of a risk item should only occur after verified evidence is in hand and relevant stakeholders have confirmed that the treatment is satisfactory. Verified evidence may include test results, configuration exports, screenshots, or reports that demonstrate controls working as intended, not just the fact that a ticket was closed. Stakeholder confirmation means that the risk owner, relevant business representatives, and sometimes auditors or compliance staff agree that residual risk is acceptable. Only then should the register mark the risk as closed, with links to all supporting material. This discipline avoids the pattern where closed simply means no one is actively looking at this anymore. If you step back, the pattern for effective risk treatment becomes clear. You triage based on grounded criteria, assign ownership and constraints, choose explicit treatments, and define tasks with tests. You schedule changes through governance structures, coordinate cross-team dependencies, and keep the risk register synchronized with reality. You validate in both staging and production, manage exceptions with deadlines and compensating controls, and report progress through quantitative trends and simple narratives. Finally, you close items only when evidence and agreement support that decision. This approach turns risk management from a document-driven exercise into a continuous, traceable process. To make this practical, choose one open risk in your current environment and focus on improving how it is managed rather than adding another item to the list. Write down what specific evidence would convince you and your stakeholders that the risk has been meaningfully reduced or brought within tolerance. That might be a particular test passing, a configuration snapshot, a monitoring alert pattern, or a signed approval from a responsible leader. Once the desired evidence is clear, work backward to define the tasks and coordination needed to produce it. That single, well-documented example can become a template for how you treat and track future risks through genuine closure. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.